All right, guys, what's up? Today I wanted to discuss a little bit about, training methodologies and how we approach training. I think that it's very easy to get it wrong. Even when you're experienced and doing it a long time, you kind of forget, what the goal is. And for me, I think the goal is always trying to learn and get better. But there's certainly a time for winning. We definitely want to do that and test our competitive spirit and test our techniques out for sure. But what I find with guys that have plateaued, let's say in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, for example, for a long time, and they feel like they're not getting better, or if I notice that a certain student isn't getting better, they're not making improvements, it usually comes down to their inability or maybe like them being uncomfortable with a certain position. And you have to be willing to sit with a certain position and work it. That's why I think like positional sparring is super important. So a lot of times people will learn some new things and just go back to doing what they do well or what they do best, or going to positions that they're comfortable with. And these are kind of patterns that we can all get caught into. Like, I do this in regular life, right? It's like certain things that I'm just used to doing, and I'll go and do that thing, as opposed to being like, all right, is this the right answer? And how can I evolve? And how can I do this differently and do it better and expand my awareness, expand my game in a different way? And again, eventually your training partners or your competition, if you're a competitor or a fighter or whatever, they'll figure you out. And you kind of want to be that enigma to people. If I can figure out your patterns, what you're doing, where you're going to be, how you do it, the more I know about you, the easier it is for me to deal with you. So I think, and not to say that you want to be that person who collects millions of moves and has a ton of moves. Like, no, not necessarily, but you need to be able to explore a lot of different positions. And I think you should focus on one position for a while. After you feel like you had a good handle on it, you go out and develop it through positional sparring or through your regular sparring. And then you kind of move on to another position, right? And obviously we do this with jiu-jitsu in general. But what I find is I see even, experienced black belts, they come out and they do the same 3 or 4 moves every single time. Now, they may be great at it, right? But they're not necessarily getting better. They're just really good at those few moves. And then they tend to panic, or it all kind of comes crumbling down when you find that other person that knows how to untie it or has figured out a way how to beat you with your positions. Right. And then there kind of is that thing like, well, now I'm going to avoid that person. That person has kind of figured me out, and I'm going to keep doing these same 3 or 4 moves from these different positions against these other guys who don't know my game. And that's not necessarily a way of improving long term. That's something I notice. And the other thing is like, you have to be comfortable with, trying to let the technique work for you. Like I try in the beginning to do things without strength. I try to take my physicality out of this. And, I've talked about this in some other videos that you guys can check out. But taking the physicality out of what you're trying to do first and let the technique work first, I think is a more courageous way of approaching it, and also a better way of developing actual technique. Then once you have that technique, then maybe injecting back that physicality, that flexibility, that strength, that speed, whatever, into the move. Now it's that much more powerful if you want it to be. But as we're learning things that are super technical, let's say like, golf is a super technical game. Like a lot of the power is kind of taken out of it. Certainly it can help, with certain things with like, driving the ball really far and things like that. But, it's such a technical sport that your mechanics are going to have to be really, really good. And the same thing goes for jiu-jitsu. And, we've all gone against that person that is smaller, weaker than us, but still kicks our butt because, they know the positions better and they are just more technical than us. So, size and strength definitely helps. But if you're really trying to learn the art of jiu-jitsu, you have to be aware of kind of shutting certain things off and really trying to focus on the technique itself and getting it to work for you. And again, sitting with certain positions that may not be comfortable. And no one likes getting beat up on. No one likes kind of being confused and like unaware of what to do in the beginning. But that's just a process of learning. Like we're constantly doing that in jiu-jitsu, and kind of letting go of that control aspect of like, all right, I'm not really great here, but I'm going to try to work it. I'm going to force myself to work it. Like those are the people that are going to get better and better and better with their jiu-jitsu, and probably with like other aspects of their life as well. So if you find that you're, hitting plateaus or not improving, ask yourself if you're really trying to explore new positions and if you're forcing yourself to actually learn the technique. And then ask yourself, as you're sparring, as you're doing your positional sparring, are you actually trying to do those new moves as opposed to kind of what you know? And we're all going to have our certain specialties and our strengths of what we do. But if you are trying to constantly advance in this sport and come up with things that are different and that are going to be confusing for people, and if you want to be that enigma on the mat that's like, I don't even know how to approach this guy because everything he does, he's got an answer for everything, or he's got a counter to everything I do. Like that's the guy you kind of want to be out there. The more positions that you explore, the more familiar you're going to be with jiu-jitsu. And also like the less tension you're going to have in your body, the more efficient you're going to be. And if you're efficient, you can repeat it over and over and over again. And that's super important. And I think that just helps your overall, character as you're learning, the art. It's just there's less fear involved. You're not going to be as panicked, and all that stuff. So, separate when is the time for you to win and when is the time for you to learn. Because it really could be a huge impediment to your evolution, as a martial artist or to whatever you're doing, whatever it is that you're learning. I would say just be aware of that and be comfortable with the uncomfortable as much as possible. Sit with those positions, try it, work it, ask questions, go back, do it again, as frustrating as it may be. Try to break those patterns that may be holding you back as well. So, thinking about what you're doing, how you're doing it is super important. I think I definitely had a curiosity to learn as much jiu-jitsu as possible. But I have gone through certain periods of my career where I was trying to be a trickster. And I had certain moves that I wanted to learn that like I wanted to have in my back pocket, like just in case. And that's fine. That's okay to do that as well. But eventually people are going to try to figure those things out. And at a certain point, you think about like, do I want to be a trickster, or do I want to be like a universal master? Do I want to be a guy who really knows grappling, or I'm just good at certain moves? And when you're just good at certain moves, it's way more limited. And I also think it's like more memory based. I think that like, if I'm navigating through an environment, I think of knowing a bunch of moves, like, putting imprints into the snow and kind of memorizing where you're placing your foot and then kind of copying where I'm placing my foot, as opposed to being in an unknown environment and knowing where to go every single time and knowing where, north, south, east, and west is, at all times. So being able to navigate unknown territory is the difference between like a universal master and say like a trickster. And the problem is that like being a trickster is super alluring. It's something you kind of, it's kind of an easier path, and you can definitely have a lot of success with it. But, success can be a liar in a lot of ways. Just because you're having a certain amount of success, doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing the right thing. And I guess I'll equate it to this, like, in my area of Massachusetts and New England, I was a big fish in a small pond. And when I started going into some of the larger tournaments, like, the Pan Ams, and going against other high level Americans, or especially high level Brazilians, especially like in the early 90s or not early 90s. I lied. I'm not that old. Late 90s. Sorry. When I was doing the Pan Amps, like I found out real quick that like my little game that worked against all those guys in New England, it was good, but didn't work against these guys. It was just a completely different level. And a lot of that has to do with, going against better competition. A lot of times you just don't know if you're that good or not because you're not going against high level competition. But also a lot of it also has to do with like developing a game that doesn't get tested and I just keep doing the same things over and over and over again. Or maybe I'm not so good at the position, like the position of guard, let's say, or half guard. Let's take half guard, for example. I have some moves in half guard, but I don't understand the half guard position. That's a very important distinction. And when you understand, let's say, a position like half guard, and I understand how it works and what I need to do to get it to work, I can do it against pretty much anybody, or at least I know what's happening if something goes wrong. And that's super important because I can't fix what I don't know, like if I don't know where the errors are happening. So having that understanding of the position is the most important thing you can gain over time is, cause again, that's how you'll be able to fix it. And then from there, you can actually create your own moves. And this is going to happen way more down the line. But you can start to understand like, okay, well, if this is true and if these mechanics are true and I need to be able to do this and that, then, well, here's a new move that I just came up with, or this is a move that works really well for me. So then you can kind of be very creative with your jiu-jitsu and find ways around things and fix things over time. So the next time you face that person, it's not like, oh, now I need 10 more moves to make my half guard better. It's like, no, I just need to fix a couple things to get everything else to work. Right. And the other thing, and related to that, if I have, 3 moves that are really good, but if I'm not able to connect them, or if I'm not able to like put them into other positions, then I'm just kind of like, I'm just hoping that I just catch someone in a trap. I'm hoping that they make a mistake. And when you go against really good grapplers, they don't make mistakes. You're going to have to force them into certain positions, initiate certain positions, and understand what happens if they shift their base here, left, right, up, or down, not for moves, but to be able to untie what they're doing and then get the upper hand on them. And we've all done that. And it's very easy for us to kind of get into patterns. Another situation that I found myself in was I was in a world title fight against BJ Penn. This was my second title shot. It was at 155 pounds, and BJ Penn was, a legendary American Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He was the first American to ever win a world championship as an American. So I had already kind of had him on a pedestal. But I had to go and fight this guy. He was also a fantastic striker. He was almost impossible to take down. He had a ton of experience in various weight classes, et cetera, et cetera. And, and there was a lot of things that didn't go great with the camp, but the fight itself, he ended up getting me with a rear naked choke, something that I'm good at, that I'm kind of known for. And, as I was, kind of thinking about the fight and talking with some of my coaches about it, my brother in particular, Keith, he asked me, he's like, hey man, when's the last time you had someone on your back? And I was like, I can't remember. He's like, yeah, you can't remember because it hasn't happened in a very, very long time. So there was a problem. Either number one, I wasn't going with guys that were better than me that could actually take my back. That was part of the issue. But the other problem was I wasn't even putting myself in that position and training it. Right? So I was thinking about all the things that I was going to try to do to BJ Penn, and I was certainly thinking of certain defensive things that I needed to be aware of. No question about it. But one thing I overlooked that really ticked me off was the rear naked choke. Something that I was good with offensively, but completely ignored. BJ Penn was really good with the rear naked choke as well. He had caught Matt Hughes, 170-pound world champion, with it. Had defeated Matt Hughes for the world championship at 170 pounds. And I thought that, well, that was Matt Hughes. He's not really that great at jiu-jitsu, maybe. He's not going to catch me with it. Right. So it's like little things like that where you can overlook certain things. You can underestimate certain people, but I'm not sure it was underestimating. I probably held BJ Penn way too high on a pedestal. But what it was me not training in a certain position and me getting caught in patterns and doing what was comfortable and not uncomfortable. And it was after that fight where I really started working on a lot of different defensive aspects of my game. And there's always things to improve on. It didn't mean I was, perfect as a defensive fighter after that, but I definitely felt way more comfortable after that. I was working back escapes. I was working mount escapes. And, that was one of the ways that I had to learn a hard lesson to understand that, of like not getting caught in patterns, learn, constantly evolve, and push yourself. So if you guys want to come out and train, I've been teaching over here at A&R Tactics in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've been doing a lot of no-gi techniques and MMA techniques in particular. We do a lot of self-defense stuff. We do some weapon retention things and disarms and different things like that, and kind of work a bunch of different stuff. That's been a lot of fun. You can also check out what I have to offer over at kennyflorian.com. You can hit me up on social media at kennyflorian. You can check out my YouTube channel. We'll be putting out a lot of this content. And if you guys are interested in more content, hit us up, ask some questions. If there's a position that you want to see, if there's something that you want me to talk about. We're running out of topics over here, so shoot your questions. If you're looking to maybe advance your no-gi game or your MMA techniques or whatever it is, come on in and give us a shout. You can hit us up over at the A&R Tactics website or over on our social media as well at A&R Tactics.